Tom had an uneventful shift as the security guard in the subway station. He played games on his phone and took full advantage of his breaks that night, counting down the hours until he could go home. But then he noticed a young blonde woman on the platform. He quickly grabbed his walkie-talkie, now on high alert. He was ready to act, but she seemed to be minding her own business. But then he saw something about her that shocked him, and he immediately called the police. Tom called the police, who arrived quickly. Despite seeing the footage, their hands were tied as the woman wasn't in danger and wasn't at the station anymore. Watching the subway at night can be relaxing, but Tom had to remain vigilant for emergencies and strange occurrences. He made a note to watch out for her in case she came back. Tom took his job seriously, vigilantly inspecting the security cameras and exits. He wouldn't hesitate to call the police if he saw anything suspicious again. But Tom knew something strange was happening here, so he stayed alert to see if the mysterious woman came back. The rest of the day, Tom was on edge. And the worst part was he had to work a double shift. He would usually go home around 6, but today he worked the evening shift as well. This wouldn't be a problem for Tom had he not seen the woman. But now, he was filled with anxiety. He felt like he was being watched, and he couldn't shake the feeling. He was so distracted that he couldn't focus on his work, and he was constantly checking the clock to see how much longer he had to stay. He was so anxious that he couldn't even enjoy his lunch break. He was relieved when his shift was finally over last night, but he was dreading the thought of having to come back for the evening shift. Now, Tom felt frightened, and he wouldn't be going home anytime soon. The sun went down, and the station got eerily quiet. And just as Tom's nerves started to settle down, he saw a familiar shape walking on the platform. He recognized her immediately, but he almost couldn't believe it was the same woman he had seen the night before. He was filled with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. He felt compelled to follow her, but he was too scared to move. He just stood there, watching her. His curiosity was growing, but he was still filled with a sense of dread. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He was determined to find out what was going on, but he was also scared of what he might discover. He was sure this was the woman from last night, but also, he could tell something had changed, giving Tom chills down his spine. But what was the woman doing on the platform? Why was she staring at the security camera, and why was Tom so frightened of her? The metro station is a bustling hub of activity, with people of all ages, backgrounds, and walks of life coming and going. You might see a business person in a suit rushing to catch a train, a student with a backpack full of books, or a family with young children. You could witness a kind stranger helping an elderly person with their bags, or a group of friends laughing and joking. You could also see a pickpocket trying to take advantage of the crowds, or a homeless person asking for spare change. But what happened today at the metro station in Brooklyn shocked everyone who had ever traveled through there. People stopped in their tracks, their eyes wide with surprise, as they watched the strange event unfold. Even the most jaded commuters were taken aback by the sheer strangeness of the situation. It was something that no one had ever seen before in the metro station, and it left everyone wondering what could possibly happen next. It started off as a typical day. Tom arrived at the station in the early morning hours and started his shift as a security guard. He watched as the station filled with people going to work. This was one of his most stressful times of day, as he had to be very focused to spot any suspicious behavior among all of those people. He was also responsible for ensuring that the station was safe and secure. Throughout the day, Tom patrolled the station, checking for any potential threats or hazards. He also monitored the CCTV cameras to ensure that the station was safe. At the end of the day, Tom made sure that the station was secure before he left. His role was essential in keeping the station safe and secure for all the people who used it. On a typical day, Tom would also be responsible for responding to any emergency situations that may arise. He would also be in charge of providing assistance to any passengers who needed help. Tom's role was an important one, and he took it very seriously. It's a tough job, but someone's got to do it, and Tom is the right man for the job. Luckily for Tom, nothing out of the ordinary happened during rush hour. So he leaned back in his chair and ate a little snack. He took a few moments to appreciate the peace and quiet of the office. He enjoyed the feeling of being able to take it easy for a change. He took a few deep breaths and let his mind wander. He was grateful for the opportunity to take a break from the hustle and bustle of the day. He savored the moment and let his worries drift away. He was content to just sit back and enjoy the moment. Normally he could sit back and relax after that, but today was different. Little did Tom know today was a day he would remember for the rest of his life. He had no idea what was in store for him, and he was completely unaware of the events that were about to unfold. He couldn't have thought in his wildest dreams that this day would be anything but ordinary. He was completely taken aback by the events that were about to take place. Hours ticked by and Tom got on with his work. The day seemed like any other day, so Tom had no reason to be worried. Tom took it easy and enjoyed the peace and quiet. He was grateful that there was no news to report, as it meant that everything was running smoothly. The metro station was usually bustling with people, but today it seemed quiet. Tom was glad that he didn't have to deal with the chaos that usually came with the station. Tom was content with the slow day, and he was able to take his time with his work. He was thankful that he didn't have to rush through anything. He got a call on his phone and answered without hesitation. "Hi," he said happily, and he walked out of the booth for some fresh air. The wind was cool and refreshing, and he took a deep breath of the crisp air. He looked around the station and noticed the bright yellow flowers that lined the walkway. He smiled, appreciating the beauty of the station and the sunlight that shone down on him. He felt grateful to be out in the sunshine after being cooped up inside for so long. That's when it happened. Tom returned to his booth only 5 minutes later. But a lot can happen in 5 minutes. He looked at the screen, expecting to see a deserted metro station with only 2 or 3 people minding their own business, but he saw something different. Tom scanned the screen and suddenly noticed a woman. She was standing in the middle of the station, looking around in a confused manner. Tom's training had taught him to recognize potential security risks, and this seemed like one of them. He knew he had to act quickly and decisively. Tom watched the woman carefully, trying to figure out what she was up to. She seemed to be looking around, as if she was searching for something. He wondered if she was lost or if she was up to something more sinister. He kept his eyes on the screen, watching her every move. He was determined to figure out what she was doing and why she was there. Questions were building up in his mind, and he was determined to get to the bottom of it. It wasn't out of the ordinary to see women in the metro station. They travel through there just as much as men. But there was something odd about this woman. Tom looked at her, and the woman looked at him. It felt like she was looking straight at him through the camera. He felt like he was being watched, and he had to watch her back. He felt a chill run down his spine as he watched her move through the station, and he kept his eyes on her the entire time. The woman seemed to be in a trance, her eyes locked on the security camera. She moved slowly, almost as if she was in a dream. Tom couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking and if she was mentally stable. He felt a sense of unease as he watched her, as if she was silently asking for help. He felt a strange connection to her, as if he was the only one who could help her. He knew he had to keep an eye on her, but he couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Tom froze. He stared at the woman for a few minutes, and during those minutes, she stared back. The whole time, they never broke eye contact. This baffled Tom. She couldn't see him. He was a few feet away in a blacked-out booth. So why did it feel like she was looking straight at him? He realized that she was staring directly into the security camera. The silence was deafening, and the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. He felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that the woman was still staring directly into the security camera. A sense of dread grew in his chest as he continued to be watched by the woman. It was almost too much to bear. He felt cold and goosebumps as he noticed the woman's eyes never leaving the security camera. What was she up to? Suddenly, Tom was jolted from his stare down with the woman. A metro train arrived. A few people stepped out of the metro and only 1 or 2 got on. The people who got off the train were in no hurry. They calmly walked out of the station, some of them chatting with each other. He had expected the station to be filled with people rushing to get on and off the train, but instead, he saw a peaceful scene of people calmly making their way in and out of the station. Tom watched as the metro left again and figured the woman would be gone. But she wasn't. She was still in the same spot, staring at the camera with a strange look on her face. It was almost like a blank stare, like she wasn't quite there. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, and her expression was one of intense concentration. The woman's face was almost expressionless, like she was in a trance. Tom couldn't help but feel a little unnerved by the woman's strange behavior. Now, Tom was getting freaked out. This woman gave him the creeps, and he wondered why she was staring so intensely at the camera the whole time. Her face was almost like a mask with no emotion or feeling. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, and her mouth was slightly open. Could there be something serious going on? He had so many questions, but he knew he had to stay calm and focus on the task at hand. He had to stay alert and be prepared for anything. At this point, he was sure that something was up with this woman. He was starting to feel a bit overwhelmed, but he knew he had to stay focused and keep his wits about him. He was determined to face this challenging situation head-on and do whatever it took to get to the bottom of it. Tom finally made a decision. He got up from his desk and stepped out of the booth. He looked around, but to his surprise, the woman was gone. How is this possible? He returned to his booth and looked at the footage again. And yes, the woman was really gone. But Tom wasn't one to let go easily. He had to see which way she had gone. He ran out of the station, but unfortunately, he was too late. The woman had already left and Tom had missed her. He felt a wave of disappointment wash over him. He had been so close to finally finding out about what she was doing there and if she needed any help. Tom searched the area, but the woman was nowhere to be found. He asked the people around the station if they had seen her, but no one had. He decided to take a walk around the area, hoping to find her. He looked around for a few minutes, but it was no use. She had vanished without a trace. Tom was left with more questions than answers. He was determined to find her and help her if she needed it. He was almost sure that she was in trouble and he wanted to help her. So, he decided to rewind the footage. As if the woman knew Tom was about to step out, she quickly ran away. She didn't take the metro, and when Tom rewound the footage even more, he noticed she didn't arrive with a metro card. She walked up the platform, stared directly into the camera for a few minutes, and left again. Tom was baffled. He had never seen someone disappear like that. He looked around the platform, but there was no trace of her. Tom was left with more questions than answers. He couldn't help but think that the woman had some kind of supernatural power. He was determined to find out what was going on. He also considered the possibility that she had been sent by someone to deliver a message, or that she was a figment of his imagination. But everything was recorded on the security camera system. He was sure she was as real can get. But she just stood there staring at the security camera. Why would anyone do that? Tom couldn't shake the feeling something could be wrong, so he decided to call the police. Maybe they had more information about the woman. She could be a fugitive or a criminal. Tom was nervous as he dialed the number. He was worried that the police wouldn't take him seriously. But he was determined to find out more about the woman. When the police answered, Tom explained the situation. He told them about the woman he saw on the platform and how she seemed to be in distress. The police thanked Tom for his call and said they would be right over. They said they would look into the matter. Tom was relieved that he had taken the initiative and called the police. He was hopeful that they would be able to help him find out more about the woman. Tom waited anxiously for the police to arrive. He was eager to find out more about the mysterious woman on the platform. But when the police arrived, they had some disappointing news for Tom. The police looked at the footage and agreed that it was rather strange. But the woman did nothing wrong and she didn't seem to be in immediate danger, so there was nothing the police could do. Tom was very disappointed but understood the police couldn't solve this case. He felt frustrated and helpless. He had done all he could, but it wasn't enough. He had wanted to help the woman, but he was unable to do so. He had no idea who she was or why she was there. He had no way of finding out what had happened to her. He felt powerless and angry that he couldn't do anything to help her. Tom was determined to find out the truth what had happened to the woman. He was determined to get help for her and make sure that whoever had done this to her would be brought to justice, if possible. But at this point, it's looking like there was nothing he could do, especially not without the help of the authorities. So he decided to do something else. Tom was no quitter. He had his sights set on the woman and couldn't stop thinking about her. So he posted a message in a WhatsApp group he shared with his colleagues. He was hoping that they could provide better help than the cops did in solving this mystery. He was hoping to get more information so he could properly assess the level of risk or threat of the situation, but he wasn't really expecting anything from his colleagues. He was also hoping that someone might have heard something that could help him understand why the woman was on the platform. He wanted to find out the truth and he was willing to do whatever it took to get to the bottom of this. He was hoping that his colleagues could provide some insight that the police had missed. And to his surprise, one of his colleagues contacted him in private with a chilling message. Apparently, Tom's colleague Jonathan had seen the woman before. She came to the station where he worked last year and did the exact same thing. He always wondered why she did that but figured she might have been going through something, so he let it go. But now, Jonathan was suddenly reminded of how creeped out he felt when he saw her. He remembered how she seemed to be speaking to him with her eyes, and how creepy that felt for him. He too wanted to ask her questions but wasn't able to. Tom's message awakened a scary memory. Jonathan was so shaken by the incident that he decided to leave the station and never come back. He knew it was a drastic decision, but he felt it was the only way to protect himself and his family. Tom was shocked to hear that this was the reason Jonathan had left work. Prior to this conversation, Jonathan had not mentioned anything about the woman, much more his encounter with her. Could he be suffering the same fate as Jonathan? He was determined not to let it get that way. Jonathan seemed very frightened. Tom couldn't see or hear him, but he felt the fear through his messages. This woman really did a number on his colleague. Tom didn't expect such a strong reaction from anyone in their group chat. But Jonathan responded almost immediately. For him, the mere thought of the woman sent a chill down Jonathan's spine. In fact, he was so traumatized by the incident that he made a strong decision that very day. Tom would never forget what Jonathan said. "This woman is bad news." I never went back to that station after that horrible day. He was concerned about what Jonathan had gone through and wondered how bad his experience at work had been that he never wanted to go back. He was also puzzled by the mysterious woman on the platform and wondered what kind of experience Jonathan had with her. He wanted to make sure that no one else would have to go through the same experience as Jonathan. She apparently frightened Jonathan so much he asked to be transferred to another station that same day. But when Tom asked Jonathan to tell him more, he went silent. Jonathan stopped replying to Tom's messages and even ignored his calls. Tom was worried about his friend's sudden disappearance and the strange woman he had encountered. He tried to reach out to Jonathan multiple times, but to no avail. Oh no, Tom thought. What the hell is going on here? Soon enough, however, Tom realized that Jonathan had simply dropped the conversation. He was done with it and no longer wanted to bring up any more memories from the past, especially about the mystery woman at the station. Tom felt disappointed, as he still had so many questions that he wanted to ask Jonathan, but he also had to respect Jonathan's decision. He decided to let the matter rest and not bring it up again. The rest of the day, Tom was on edge, and the worst part was he had to work a double shift. He would usually go home around 6, but today he worked the evening shift as well. This wouldn't be a problem for Tom as he never saw the woman, but now Tom felt frightened, and he wouldn't be going home anytime soon. He was worried that the woman might show up again and cause more trouble. He was so anxious that he couldn't focus on his job. He was so tense that he was sweating and his heart was racing. He couldn't stop thinking about his conversation with Jonathan. Despite being prepared mentally, he was actually dreading the thought of her showing up again. But still, he didn't want this worry to take over him or paralyze him from doing his job. He tried to keep his focus. There were plenty of other guests at the metro station he had to take care of, after all. The sun went down and the station got eerily quiet. And just as Tom's nerves started to settle down, he saw a familiar shape walking on the platform. He recognized the same shoulder-length hair, leather jacket, and light-colored jeans. Tom was taken aback. He had seen this woman here before, but she had seemed so lost and confused. But this time she seemed more composed, like she knew where she was going. She seemed to be looking around, as if she was searching for something. He wanted to go up to her and ask if she was okay, but he was too scared. He watched her on the platform, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Turn around, Tom thought. Show me your face. And she turned around. Tom was surprised. He was amazed that his thoughts had been answered so quickly. He couldn't believe his eyes and he was left speechless. The woman turned around and, without any hesitation, looked straight at the camera. But this time she looked different. Her serious face had changed into a smile. But not a kind smile. She smiled in a way that people in horror movies smiled. Tom noticed the difference in her appearance and demeanor. She seemed to be in a much better mood than the day before. He was intrigued by the transformation and wanted to know what had caused it. He also noticed that her clothing had changed. She was wearing a different outfit than the day before, one that was more stylish and fashionable. He wondered if the change in her wardrobe had anything to do with her newfound confidence. Tom was amazed at the transformation he had witnessed. He was curious to know what had caused the woman to have such a different attitude than the day before. Without thinking, he dialed 911 and asked for the police to come. They failed to do something the last time, but this time she was still here. They might be able to interfere with her plans if she had any. He was hoping that the police would be able to help him this time. He was determined to make sure that the police would take this seriously and investigate the situation. Tom waited anxiously for the cops to arrive. He had no idea how long the woman would stay on the platform. In the meantime, he could only look and be vigilant to make sure she didn't do anything dangerous. He kept a close eye on her, making sure she didn't move from her spot. He also made sure that no one else came too close to her. He was determined to keep her safe until the police arrived. The police arrived and surrounded the woman. They arrested her and took her to the station, but they later informed Tom that they had to let her go. Apparently, she wasn't planning to do anything wrong. He thought that they had enough evidence to keep her in custody. The police were able to gather more information from her about her motives. She had been trying to find out information about a certain person, but she had no intention of doing anything illegal. Who this person was, Tom had no idea. As it would turn out, it would be someone that would really surprise him. The police were satisfied with her explanation and decided to let her go. Tom was still confused as to why they let her go, but he was glad that the situation was resolved peacefully. The police thanked Tom for his help and told him what they learned from her. What they revealed would be shocking for Tom. Apparently, she wasn't planning to do anything wrong. She knew Tom worked there but was too scared to ask for his number directly, so she tried flirting with him through the camera. Tom couldn't believe his ears. She was there for him, after all, but not for the reasons he thought. Tom felt like an idiot. He contacted the woman and apologized for sending the cops at her. Tom had thought he was doing the right thing at the time, but he was wrong. But she wasn't angry with him. Instead, she said she understood that he was simply doing his job. She also said she could have done things differently, and this would have been handled better. He was embarrassed for having suspected the woman so wrongly, but he was thankful that it all worked out in the end. They later agreed to go on a date, and the rest is history. During their date, the woman informed Tom that she was looking for information on his former co-worker Jonathan. This surprised Tom because he had suspected her to be the one doing something illegal the whole time, not the man who he thought was his friend. He was involved in some pretty shady business, and the woman had tried to reveal his whereabouts to police so they could catch him. Tom was stunned that he hadn't caught on earlier, but that wasn't the only thing he was clueless about. Sometimes the best things in life start out in the strangest of ways. It was a story of how Tom had wrongly suspected the woman and called the cops on her, but it all worked out in the end. The woman was understanding and forgiving, and they eventually went on a date. It was a date that changed their lives forever. Tom and the woman were both surprised at how their relationship had blossomed from such an awkward start. They were grateful for the strange turn of events that had led them to each other. They are now happily married with 2 kids and tell the story of how they met with great happiness.